The Stillwater Planning Commission meeting of February 15th is called to order. It'll be the process this evening to call for items on the agenda. The commission will hear briefly from staff first, then the applicant and/or their representative, then open a public hearing and hear from those in favor and/or in opposition to the request. When you come to the podium, please clearly state your name and address for the record. Before closing the public hearing, both staff, applicant, and/or their representative will be provided an opportunity to respond to provide additional information and answer questions. After all interested parties have spoken, the public hearing will be closed. We will hear closing remarks and alternatives from staff. With that, the first item on the agenda is a specific use permit, SUP 2109, from Two Sons, Inc., requesting review and approval of a specific use permit to allow medical marijuana dispensary at property addressed as 611 West High Point Drive.
Good evening, Commissioners. Brady Moore from the City Manager's Office. Tonight, I'm bringing forward the case that was tabled at our previous meeting on February 1st, SUP 21-09 at 611 West High Point Drive. We'll just go through here. The area map shows the hash pattern of the location site along High Point Drive. That sits to the east of Boomer and to the northwest of Cimarron Plaza. The aerial map here shows, again, the subject site, and it also gives us a view of the commercial parking that is adequate for this use at this site. Again, this street view shows us the subject site with the parking that is adequate for commercial use. As we look at the zoning for this site, it's zone CS, commercial shopping. Our land development code in CS requires an SUP for a medical marijuana dispensary, and so that fits with this zoning. And as we look at a future land use map from our comprehensive plan, just to make sure that commercial is still in our future plans in this corridor or in this area, this red on the map shows that it does indeed stay commercial for this subject site. Last time, as you'll remember, we talked about the distance and proximity to the Stillwater High School baseball and softball indoor facility. As we read through the code and we're trying to determine, we asked, and that's the reason we tabled the item. We did get an opinion from Beth Ann Childs for this site. And as the applicant has been made aware of it, and I believe you all received an email today stating that it is not prohibited by the rule of the 1,000 feet because it's not the main classroom school. Is there any other questions you have of staff regarding that judgment of Beth Ann or our legal counsel that's here tonight? Okay. All right.
At this time, if the applicant and or their representative would like to come forward and say a few words to the council, now would be the time to do so.
Do you need me to state my name and address again?
Yes, please.
Jose Mario Sanchez, 407 South Lowry, Stillwater, Oklahoma, 74074. Thank you, Commissioners, for hearing our case. I would like to say that we were concerned about the distance to the batting cages so far as that I went back and redid my due diligence again to make sure that I hadn't missed something the first time. And apparently OMA agreed. So that's that part. The other thing is that there was a second objection that I didn't find out about till last week from the Payne County Court. Apparently the letter was handed in, but it was never read, and I never got a copy of it till last week, and realized that they had also objected. But it wasn't about the batting cages, it was about the location in the same area. So at this point, we'd like to respond formally to that objection. And one of our team members, Molly, will read that response if you're okay with that.
That would be
Thank
fine.
you.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, could you please state your name and address for the record?
My name is Molly Delp. I live at 407 South Lowry Street, Stillwater, 74074. This letter serves as a formal response to the complaint filed by the Payne County Drug Court Board of Directors to SUP 21-09. Their complaint states their concern regarding the impact of a medical marijuana dispensary located in the same area as their facility. To begin, Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority, the OMA, has rigorous licensing requirements and conducts thorough audits on all license holders to ensure continued compliance. OMA's stated responsibility is licensing, regulating, and administering the program as authorized by state law. Operating under Oklahoma State Department of Health, the primary goal is to ensure safe and responsible practices for the people of Oklahoma. Atlas Organics has completed the application process through OMA and has earned an approved dispensary license. We seek to promote the well-being of our clients by educating them about the different properties of medical marijuana and its uses. Establishing a reputable and professional dispensary is our top priority. And we will continually work towards maintaining a safe location for the sale of medical marijuana to clients with a valid medical marijuana patient license. It is our personal and professional commitment to uphold and exceed the expectations set forth by OMA. Neither the OMA regulations nor the City of Stillwater zoning code prohibit establishing a dispensary in the same area as a treatment service facility. Therefore, the specific permit use should be allowed. In closing, and in the spirit of community inclusion and concern for the health and safety of our clients and their families, we would welcome an open dialogue with the Payne County Drug Court Board of Directors to establish a working relationship that will help educate clients of the pitfalls of substance abuse, addiction, and the responsibilities that come with being an approved medical marijuana licensee. Respectfully, Atlas Organics. Thank you very much. If you have any further questions, you can direct them to me or President Jose Sanchez.
Commissioners have any questions for the applicant?
I'd like to ask a question.
Okay.
Have you contacted Payne County District Court and have about your intentions and learned what they felt about it?
You want to
I will
return
direct
to
you
the
to
microphone?
Jose.
That'd be
Yes,
great.
thank you.
We felt we needed to address the objection with the commissioners first and move forward from there.
But you have never contacted them prior to making the application or prior to the meeting tonight to find out their opinion of a marijuana dispensary across the street?
No.
Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant?
No, I would like to say that I didn't see a reason to, since they don't own that property, but you know, that not their property, my property. Thank you.
I think we may have one more question for you, sir.
Yes.
Did you have one? Okay, I'm sorry. I thought we had one. We do not.
All right. Thank you.
Is there anyone else present this evening that would like to speak in favor of the application? Is there anyone present this evening that would like to speak in opposition of the application? Seeing none, let's have staff return and present alternatives for the commissioners to consider.
Yes. So the alternatives are you can accept the findings and recommend that the city council approve the proposed specific use permit as presented. You can accept the findings and recommend the city council approve the proposed specific use with conditions, noting what conditions are being recommended. You can find that the specific use permit is not an appropriate use for the property based upon the impacts to the surrounding vicinity and do not recommend that the city council approve the request. And lastly, you can find that the additional information or discussion is needed prior to making a recommendation and table the request to a date certain. Any other questions?
I don't see any, thank you. Is there discussion amongst the commissioners?
I have a question for council, please. So this was tabled once.
Yes.
If tabled again, are we still on the clock for that 60-day window, or does the 60-day window start from today?
From the original application, from the original, I believe it was from the original.
Which was February 1st, right? Okay, yeah.
So we're still well within the time frame.
So essentially more.
Any other discussion amongst the commissioners?
I have a comment.
That works.
I find it difficult to imagine a marijuana dispensary across the street from the Payne County District Court, given what the district court is responsible for doing.
I need to clarify, it's not the district
Drug
court.
court.
It's a drug program that the court can refer defendants to, excuse
Okay,
me.
I think I was repeating, what is the name
Yeah.
of the?
It's a drug court program, so a defendant who comes from a judge for drug charges can be referred to this program
Okay.
and as for like a deferred sentence type of
Okay.
program. It's
So
like a probation.
What is the appropriate title?
I just want to make clear it wasn't the actual district court was
No,
not
I
across
know-
the street.
Well, I know that. I know what they do.
Yeah, it's a separate entity completely from the court.
Yes, we had a letter from them that explained what they do, and they have up to 60 people a day going through to their office, back and forth, 5 days a week, going for counseling, and every person that comes to that place is going there because of some kind of drug-related issue. They've come from the court to get treatment from counseling and other treatments. The court has provided this as an option to them. So there's a constant flow of people in there who have trouble with addiction issues, minor or major, doesn't matter, but they're there because of an addiction issue, drugs, alcohol, all of those. And in order for there to be a marijuana dispensary, it has to be approved by the city in that location, which means that if it is approved, it is more or less saying, giving institutional approval for the kind of situation that would result afterwards, which is a dispensary across the street from an institution that is there.
The decision before the commission is how it affects the surrounding vicinity. It's not whether or not you believe that the medical marijuana is the best interest of the citizens. That's not the decision before you. It's whether or not it impacts the surrounding vicinity.
Well, I thought that's what I was talking about, but in any case.
Well, I apologize if I misunderstood you.
Okay. In any case, the city would be authorizing a marijuana dispensary across the street from a place that is directed by the Payne County Court, District Court, to do interventions in the case of drug or addiction issues. It's hard for me to reconcile that.
But I think you've told us that if we have a position that we're going to deny an application, we need to justify that. And I don't see, that would seem like that would be OMA's role or somebody's role to write that into legislation related to dispensaries, as they did with schools. So if there was a conflict that they wanted us to consider, that would be defined. I guess I don't see how we have a basis for not approving the application.
I think that's what our discussion is this evening, is what we as commissioners perceive would be change in the surrounding area. So one of the ways I look at it is, would having the medical marijuana dispensary in this location keep people who need that addiction treatment from going to addiction treatment because they feel like that it's going to keep them from being there? They feel like there's a stumbling block in their way to be able to go to receive treatment. Yeah, I mean, and it's also, it's a step beyond just getting treatment for addiction. It's also the people that are here have gone to court, they've been before a judge, and they're looking at some legal issues that they need to deal with. And this is one of their avenues that they can choose to do because they've had an issue with the law related to drug use.
Okay.
Excuse me, Molly, would you please come up? I have a question for you, and you'll have to forgive me. I didn't catch your last name.
Delp, D-E-L-P. Thank you.
Got it. Miss Delp, thank you so much for coming back up. So in your response, you indicated that you would be willing, that you and the applicant would be willing to meet with the Payne County Drug Court and
Yes.
have some discussions. Within those discussions, are you indicating that you might be willing to make some concessions if either of you both have a meeting of the mind to what some concessions might be?
Yes, absolutely, yes. And it's my current understanding that someone who is going through the court program is allowed to have a medical license. My understanding is also that the Payne County Drug Court will remove those licenses upon someone's initiation to the program. So legally, we would not be able to sell their clients anything. It is prohibited by the state. So communication with the drug court could assist us in making sure that we know who they are currently serving. If we need to have a list, if OMA contains that list, we do need to be in communication with them to help them uphold their standards for their clients. Does that answer your question?
That does. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
So is you're thinking that perhaps this case could be tabled again, contingent upon a discussion between Payne County Drug Court and the proposed marijuana dispensary?
That is exactly my thoughts, Commissioner. So, so my thoughts are, since either of the two parties have not had discussions yet, they were waiting, they were being preemptive in having those conversations depending on what happens with some of the findings from OMMA and our legal counsel. Now that they have those answers, I think they're willing to have those conversations per Ms. Delp's response to us. So I'm very much in favor of tabling this again. I don't know a date yet, but so that they collectively can have, so they can collectively have those conversations, maybe come to some concessions or whatnot, and move from there. So
And they could debrief us on what the content of those discussions were.
that would be the idea. Yep. So it would make sense to table it to, and again, we're having conversations. I'm not making a motion, but table it a couple of weeks out so that they can come back, present to us what happened there, and then we still have time to, you know, we still have 30 more days or 2 weeks or whatever to make a vote. So that's kind of my thought.
So we might ask the applicant, or you're willing to do that? Would you like to come speak?
My name is Francisco Sanchez. My address is 605 West 49th Avenue, Stillwater, Oklahoma, 74074. In response to what you just discussed, we are willing to work with the Payne County Drug Court Services in making sure our clients who come in are educated and that we don't make any situation with drug addiction any worse than it is in Stillwater. The approval, whether we work with them or not, should still be allowed based on the findings we gave you with the attorneys, and the proximity. So we would like to ask that we move this forward, and we will speak with the board of directors as a business, because that's how I believe it should be done, with the idea that it being close to them is going to make it more difficult for someone to complete their treatment. When you leave that area, if you turn left or right, typically south, there's another dispensary there. So within 30 seconds to a minute, you see another one. And at what point does the close area become that how many dispensaries must work with the Payne County Drug Services? I don't believe any of them have even offered that. But, we do want to have our dispensary run in a form and fashion where it's respected, and that when you walk in, you don't feel uncomfortable. You don't feel, like they're just here to sell you whatever you're here to buy. We're here to help. The point, though, is that discussion should be separate of the decision that's being made right now. Thank you.
Other discussion among the commissioners?
Well, I did have a similar thought to that, in that you don't have to go very far in Stillwater before you pass a dispensary. So I guess if you lived in those apartments and you walked to the courthouse, that would be really the only situation where you probably don't pass a dispensary on your way to that facility. So it seems like a valid point.
I think for me, it's interesting to note that majority of the dispensaries are on main thoroughfares, and they get a lot of visibility. Retail sales typically want visibility. This particular location is a little bit off the beaten track, so in my mind, that stands out a little bit to me. Folks really don't usually go down High Point Drive unless they're going to one of the destinations down there.
Well, I'd like to continue that, is that if you're standing in the parking lot of the Payne County Drug Court, you're looking ahead of you at the Payne County Drug Court, and if you look to the left, you're looking at a marijuana dispensary. The other marijuana dispensary that's out on Boomer Road, well, that's just part of the landscape. In this case, the city would be authorizing, and again, I state that would be like an institutional recognition or institutional approval for a person driving down that street. Well, I can either go to the dispensary or I could go to the Payne County Drug Court. There are only two businesses on the end of that street.
The applicant like to speak?
I think this is the last time you'll hear from me today. While I do understand that, I'd like to envision maybe in a year or two what this area will look like. This is a property that our family has owned for over 2 decades, And now to see the enhancement that's going to happen with the Lakeview Landing and the commerce that's about to be brought to that area, it will also host a world-class brewery, probably one of the best I've ever seen, an entertainment venue, and then a lot of other apartment buildings. So this area is changing. We're not trying to cause an issue in the area, but we are trying to look forward to who else will be moving into the area and how we can complement those businesses. That was our consideration for the area. We're using a resource that we already have, and we're expanding on it, looking towards the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other thoughts from the commissioners? Anyone entertaining a motion?
I'd like to make the motion for alternative 2.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
We would need to establish the impacts in the surrounding vicinity for the record.
Need to establish what?
You need to establish the motion and say the impacts of the surrounding vicinity so that she can record those in the minutes for our record.
What is going to be the impact to the vicinity?
Yes.
Why it is not appropriate?
You need that as part of the motion?
Yes.
Okay. Would you like to
Okay.
amend your motion to
Then I
include?
guess I would have to make, I don't, should I read the first 2.5 lines, or can I just start at the end of?
That's
You-
fine.
You
can
just amend your motion with however you'd like to add to it.
Well, I find it inappropriate for the vicinity because it does not reconcile with the business of the Payne County Drug Court. Maybe I should say, it conflicts. Another thing is that it would conflict with another business in the vicinity. Maybe that doesn't make it. I don't know what the terminology would be. But just everything that governs the existence of the Payne County Drug Court would be compromised. Once they have about what they consider about 80% success rate with the persons who are recommended to go there by the Payne County District Court. And they have an 80% success rate, so the success rate could decrease. So that would be, you can't talk about the whole Payne County, you can talk only about the vicinity. So that would be a detriment to that business. That business could lose, it would suffer. It wouldn't be as effective as it currently is in achieving its business goals. So that's a lot of words.
Would you like to try to clean it up a little bit?
The proposed business has irreconcilable conflicts with a business directly across the street. No, it's possible. Our legal counsel could say you can't deny it for that. If that's true, then that's it.
Based upon tonight's discussion will be the record. I just wanted to be clear because it seemed like some of your concerns were clarified when they spoke. So I just want to make sure if we're going to deny that the issues are clear for the record of what the issues are now after all the questions were answered tonight by the applicant. Excuse me.
Okay. Well, that's about all I can say then, without adding half a dozen
And if
paragraphs.
any other commissioners want to add to the surrounding impacts, that's fine as well.
That's the only reason, I guess I'm making the motion. It has to be, hadn't been seconded yet, but I'm making the motion, and that's the only justification I have for it, is that the marijuana dispensary has irreconcilable conflicts with an existing business right across the street. And you said it's got to be vicinity, so it can't be, I guess the vicinity is some undetermined boundary nearby, not the whole county. So it would be the effect on that business. It would not be able to achieve its, and it's been there for 20 years doing this, so now it wouldn't be able to do what it's been doing for 20 years, as effectively it is now.
Commissioner, if I hear you correctly, you're motioning that this permit is not an appropriate use based on the proximity to the Payne County Drug Court.
Yes.
Is that good enough?
Thank you.
Do I hear a second? Motion dies for lack of second. Would you like to try another motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we table this until March the 1st so that both parties can have a 14-day opportunity to, or greater than 14-day opportunity to have discussion and possibly reconcile any concessions that may be beneficial to both parties.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. We'll now vote. Okay. Motion passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda. Brady, I'll let you introduce this.
Yes. Who's over? Yeah. So I want to introduce to you, because this is their first time here in Stillwater, but this is our consultants for planning from Johnson & Associates. We're excited to have them on board. This is their first time to present to you. This is Mark Zitzow. Is that how you say it correctly? All right. So we're, excited to have him here.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mark Zitzow. I'm with Johnson & Associates. Address for the record is 1 East Sheridan Avenue, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, 73104. With me tonight is Kelly Driscoll, a planner in our office. I'd just like to start out by saying we appreciate the time here tonight and working with your staff. They're great, very helpful, and very knowledgeable, so we've enjoyed this opportunity so far. I'm going to walk through a request for a rezoning of some property around Stanley, 8th, Blakely, and Adams for a map amendment. So on your screen is the area outlined in the purple hatch that has been requested to be rezoned. It's immediately south of the Stillwater Medical Center. Here's an aerial of the site. You can see that currently there are some homes that are primarily vacant within the yellow boundary. 7th being on the north, 8th on the south. Again, this is south of the existing Stillwater Medical Center. There are some street views here that will kind of help orient you around the property. This first view, lost my note. This first view is looking northeast toward the Stillwater Medical Center. The second view is looking northwest from 7th. And then this view here is looking northeast at 8th and Blakely. This view is looking northwest at 8th and Adams. So you can see there are a few homes still present in and around the area. Here's a zoning map. The request is going from a mix of zoning, which is O and RSS. The O is the piece that is in the kind of beige, light salmon color along Stanley, and the remaining is the single-family residential. Here's your future land use map that I'm sure you're all familiar with from your comprehensive plan. And when we zoom in, you can see that this area was designated in this plan for commercial uses. As you move through the comprehensive plan, I think it's important to note that within the commercial designation, office is a use that is projected, and with a public zoning, office is a use that would be allowed. In the comprehensive plan, it speaks to what happens when uses are next to one another that might cause concern and need mitigation, and through that it recommends buffers and screening and other things which are found throughout the staff report. So with that, I think we move to the public hearing, and then we'll step out of the way.
Okay, thank you. Did any of the commissioners have any questions for staff?
Yes,
Yeah, we have
I
a
do.
question.
So I drove around the area defined by the map amendment, but I couldn't tell how many structures were occupied and how many were unoccupied.
Based on the information that we've been provided, the structures that are within the map amendment request are all vacant and currently owned by Stillwater Medical Center. Is that accurate?
Yeah, and the applicant's engineer, Stephen Ghost, is here to answer any questions too that you
Okay.
might have.
All right, very good. Any other questions for staff? No? Okay,
So
thank you.
you represent the city or the applicant?
We represent the
staff.
city.
The city? Okay,
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
Anything
you.
else? Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to offer to have the applicant or the representative to come up and speak.
Good evening, Commissioners. Stephen Ghost with Ghost & Associates, 113 East 8th Avenue. We're here on behalf of our client, Stillwater Medical, seeking this recommendation of approval to City Council for this map amendment. To answer the initial question, the hospital says about half of those are occupied right now. They're rental. All the structures and land is owned by Stillwater Medical currently. So I'm here to answer any other questions you might have.
Any other questions for the applicant?
So you say they're vacant, and why are they vacant?
I mean, the hospital's been acquiring property around them for future expansion, and so part of this request is to get the zoning in place for public that's consistent with the rest of the medical center properties to allow for future land planning for the hospital.
Okay, so they're vacant because the medical center doesn't want to rent them right now.
Well, some of them they rent, some of them they don't. I think some of them have storage in them, some of them are being used by Flint Co. for the construction of the current buildings, so.
Okay, well, what is the intended result or intended use of that property?
Right now, I mean, this is very early in the master planning, so there's no specific plans yet. It could be medical office, it could be parking for those structures, but it will be medical related to the hospital.
Well, I noticed on part of it from their master plan that there's a parking garage designated for the strip north of 8th between Stanley and Blakely. But for the other part, there's nothing in the plan.
Yeah, and
So-
there's plans, again, it could be office, it could be parking, it could be structured, it could be surface. It's things in the hospital's world change on a daily basis, needs, doctors that are coming in, services they can provide. So it's pretty fluid. There's no active plan to build anything right now. Again, this is
So
trying to
everything
get
seems
zoning.
pretty much in flux, but what's going to happen to the property in the meantime?
I mean, they'll maintain it to the current city's Stillwater property standards.
Well, half of them are vacant. What does that mean?
I mean, there's a lot of vacant properties in this town, so
So they'll be left standing but vacant.
that's a possibility. But yeah,
Okay. Well, I noticed they took 3 lots on Blakely and turned it into staging for Flint Co.
that area to the south was south of 9th is what you're talking about.
Between 7th and 8th, to the east, on the east side of Blakely.
Yeah.
There are
Yeah.
3 lots there. 2 houses are still there. 1 house has been demolished,
In
and it's
Flintcomb.
used for staging for Flintco.
Yes, yes.
Is that going to stay that way until they
Until the
decide what to do?
construction that they're currently doing is complete, because there's no room north
Well,
of
I know why
7th,
they have
yeah.
staging there. That's, you
Yes.
need a place for staging, right?
Yes.
So, I know, but the other properties, so they could just stay vacant, I mean, almost indefinitely.
That's a possibility, yes. That's not their intent, but
So would they consider keeping them in good shape so they could be rented?
Just to clarify, any residence or house or structure in the city has to maintain the property in accordance with the city's ordinances. So they would not be able to be
I mean, if the
become
roofs
abandoned
cave
where they're
in,
not,
they've
yeah,
gotta
taken
be
care of.
taken care of.
They still have to be in compliance with our code, just like any house that's vacant or any other structure that's vacant in the city.
And occupied
So
homes,
what would
too.
be the consequence of changing it to public? They're
For-
no longer, I mean, the houses could
The
be.
use would be public.
It would be public, the houses could be demolished and the lot turned into grass, I suppose, or
Yeah,
whatever.
various uses of this, that the hospital determines, yes, it could be.
Well, except that they don't know what they're gonna do with it, and it's
Correct.
indefinite, it could be 10 years, 20 years, so I'm trying to get at what might happen during that period.
So
And once it's
is-
public, they could be demolished, and it could be just left open land.
So Commissioner, this is the first step
Mhm.
in looking at a long-term plan for Stillwater Medical Center for expansion.
Mhm.
So I think what we're looking at this evening is to see whether or not this change in zoning, this map amendment, works within our comprehensive plan, and if we think that it is an asset to the
Appropriate.
community and it fits into the neighborhood.
Because right now, they couldn't
I
do
mean, we-
anything within the RSS zoned
But they don't-
areas
but they don't-
related to the medical
For one
center.
part of it, they have planned a parking garage.
It's a master plan, which is subject to change, yes. There
Sure,
there
but
could
for
be a
the rest
parking
of it, they
garage.
haven't any plans. What I'm trying to figure out is, since it is a residential area, there's still people living there that, like the neighborhood, so what are they gonna be looking at until the decision is made to
So if there,
build something?
if it's excuse me, I'm just
Let's
going to jump
go.
in here. For anyone who has rental property, they can choose to rent the property or not rent the property. They can choose to have tenants or not have tenants. That's the prerogative of the property owner. Whether that property owner is a public entity or a private entity, it's still the same. As we've talked about, the structures would have to be kept in accordance with city code. If something is found to be a public nuisance, then the owner would be on the hook to rectify
Abate that, yeah.
that situation.
As they are now. There's, as
So-
the current
so
state
bu-
it is now, as residential, they still have to abide by the codes and not become a
Okay.
nuisance.
But now it's gonna be public if they're successful.
They still have to abide by the codes still and keep the maintenance of the
Well, it
structures.
is, so they would essentially stay the same as residential, single-family, even though it's public, and they would have to maintain it as residential, single-family.
Yeah, the
though
nuisance
it's
code
public.
applies straight across the board, whether you're commercial, residential, all, the standards say the same, that you cannot become a dilapidated building, you can't have overgrown weeds, it doesn't matter if it's residential or commercial, it applies the same.
Okay. Yeah, well, it was just unclear to me, since I saw nothing in the master plan for what they were gonna do with it, and now all of a sudden it's gonna become
and-
public from, and I'm just curious what's.
I'll
what's
also
going on.
point out, as the applicant has stated, master plans are fluid. And so whatever we see in front of us, there's nothing holding anyone's feet to the fire that whatever is shown in a master plan will be built.
Right, which actually does lead to more questions, like, what is it gonna be? Because it's a residential area,
The
there are lots of
question
families
this
around there.
evening is whether or not to consider changing the zoning to public.
Okay, because that'll have big repercussions for the neighborhood.
Okay, can we put that in the parking lot and talk about that for commissioner discussion after we heard all the facts?
Sure.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Is
Are
there
there
any other
any-
questions for the applicant?
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here this evening that would like to speak in favor of this item?
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Stephen Taylor. I work for Stillwater Medical Center. My address is 3911 North Washington, Stillwater, Oklahoma, 74074. We don't have any immediate plans. We'll keep those properties up the way that we're supposed to and rent the ones that we can rent. It could be a parking garage as indicated on the master plan, or it could be a medical office building. It just kind of depends as we work throughout the year where the greatest need is. If we're running out of physician space because we recruited a new physician and we need medical office space, it could be a medical office building. So I wish I could tell you exactly what it's going to be, but I don't know. But it will be medical related, whether it's an office building or parking, because we put another building on the main campus of the hospital.
Any other questions for Mr. Taylor? Thank you, appreciate it. Is there anyone else here this evening that would like to speak in favor of this item? Is there anyone here this evening that would like to speak in opposition of this item? Please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Hello, I'm Ariel Ross. I live at 1221 West 8th. So if you can remember the map, I'm right on the other street, right at 8th and Blakely. So I'm not directly in opposition to this. I'm just concerned about it. This is my neighborhood. The people across the street who are occupying those rental properties now are my neighbors. I know them. They sell me Girl Scout cookies. I'm concerned on their behalf that they, as far as I can tell, they're pretty long-term residents. I'm only a 2-year resident. If I'd known that this was coming up when we bought the house, I'm not certain I would have bought it. There are worse neighbors to have than Stillwater Medical. I support Stillwater Medical for sure. I really don't want to live across the street from a parking garage. And in general, you know, Brady, I think, or I don't know your name, talked about buffering, the sort of work that you can do, whether with landscaping or spacing, to create a transitional zone between the type of zoning activities that would impact residential areas. So just, I hope that you'll consider to think about that as you move forward. If this comes up again, you know, I know whatever happens within public zoning, you would be opening up the space for that. And so I just want to make sure that there is that awareness that this is a residential neighborhood right across the street. We have kids, you know, we're already super impacted by the construction at the hospital. Our block has essentially become extended construction parking. We barely have space to put our trash cans out because that's where they're parking. So we've been living with the impact of that for a couple of years, and I'm, as a homeowner, worried about the impact going forward. So I appreciate you talking about it.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you. Is there anyone else present this evening that would like to speak in opposition of this item? Seeing none, we'll ask staff to return and provide recommendations. I'm sorry, not recommendations, findings.
Yes. Okay, so our findings on this application was that the Land Development Code allows for rezoning of land via the map amendment process. The proposed public zoning district is located directly to the north and west of the subject site. Mitigation measures should be included in future development plans to limit the placement of things like dumpsters within 50 feet of homes, and to provide proper landscape, screening, and fencing adjacent to where single-family development still does exist. The comprehensive plan calls for commercial uses in this area. This includes office. And the comprehensive plan recognizes that the public uses may be found when mixed appropriately within the residential districts. The alternatives: accept the findings, recommend approval as requested, find the request is not appropriate, and recommend denial. You can table to a date certain, or you can find that an alternative zoning classification would be more appropriate to address possible land use conflicts. happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff this time?
So is this the time I was supposed to ask the questions?
If you've got a question for staff, yes, or we can start discussion.
Oh,
Either way.
wow. No.
Okay, thank you, Mark, appreciate it.
Thank you.
So yeah, this would be a great time to discuss amongst the commissioners. I think
Okay.
we've got information now.
Well, I do have a comment. I think it's a huge impact on the community there. And I don't think the Stillwater Medical Center has done a very good job of informing the local community about their future plans. I can give a couple of examples if that is appropriate. That
Sure.
Flintco is operating there now. They've been there over a year. So they rented a city block about 2 blocks away and covered it with half of the city block with gravel. It's a parking lot, but nobody uses it. So they jam up parking on all the residential streets around the medical center. There's, as someone just mentioned, there's pickup trucks forever. They also, because they own that whole, almost all that city lot between Blakely and Adams and 7th and 8th, except for 2 lots to the north, which are going to apparently stay residential single family. I don't know how that happened, but 2 lots are going to be an island in the middle of an ocean of public. They took 1, 2, 3 lots and turned them into staging for Flintco. And I go by there every day and I don't see much screening for the other lots. I mean, it just isn't there. So they aren't doing screening now. I don't know why they would do screening later if they're not, don't feel compelled to do it now.
So are you talking about like temporary during construction, or are you talking about?
Yeah, it's temporary, but it's going to be 2 years. So if you live there, temporary is,
Yeah, construction
Is it-
takes a while.
yeah. It's,
So I might just ask staff if you would return for a moment and just ask the findings that you presented. My interpretation is that that is, when we're talking about screening and those sorts of things, that is the final placement and final condition of a project, not necessarily during construction. Do we have anything, and Brady, I'll look at you, and then I'll also maybe ask legal counsel here. Do we have anything in the ordinance that says that there needs to be screening during the time of construction between a construction project that's commercial and a residential area?
I will defer that to Brady.
Yeah, no, I don't believe that there is anything in the code that I'm aware of that, and I'm looking at Kim and agreeing.
I'm not aware,
So,
I'm not saying there isn't, but I would be surprised if there was.
yeah. So,
That's what I,
Stephen, do you want to address on behalf of the applicant any plans?
we'll hear from everyone this evening.
Yeah, exactly. And
There's not, no temporary.
go ahead and say.
Jeff Matthews, Community Development Director, City of Stillwater. On temporary job site locations, there's not screening requirements for that. No, there's not.
All right, thank you so much, we appreciate that. That answers the question, that's why you don't see it now.
so,
But if it
I
was
guess
a-
nobody does anything unless there's a law. And of course, we don't like laws either. We don't like regulation and laws, but they won't do it unless there is one. So anyhow,
And I think there also ought to be a point, I don't know where it is, if our legal counsel can help, but if there is a conflict of interest when you're a board member, I know even as myself as city staff and a landowner in this town, when I know is one of the questions when we interviewed commissioners for this, is to, sometimes you may have to withdraw yourself. I know it'd be tough for me if there was a case with the Westwood overlay that I might have to recuse myself from even being a staff up here representing. So sometime you might have to recuse yourself if
Yes, it would be a
there is a-
recusal. If there's a conflict of interest, commissioners would need to recuse themselves, and they would not have, usually not even part of the discussion, but definitely not a part of the vote. They would abstain from that.
I get mainly my comments are in regards to, I'm not necessarily against this kind of rezoning. It's just, it would be good for the neighborhood to know what the consequences of that change would be. And I don't view a conflict of interest in this case at all. I've lived in town 30 years, and I've driven by a lot of places and have opinions, but I don't know anything by there. So it is going to be, this is going to have big consequences, changing this. So the neighborhood has or a right to know what it means for them. And I don't know, maybe legally it isn't possible, but I think the medical center, at least as a neighbor, has an obligation to inform the surrounding community the consequences of the change. Maybe not legally, but morally.
Any other discussion among commissioners, thoughts, questions? Comment?
Yeah, I have a couple of comments. Obviously, Stillwater Medical Center is a big economic engine for the city. It also contributes to the health and safety of the community. And anyone who understands economic development and has seen other medical districts and other cities understands these kind of expansions are, if not inevitable, there's a high degree of probability they're going to happen. That being said, I think the Commissioner has some very cogent comments about the relationship between the business and the surrounding neighborhood and community. It's unfortunate there are not any kind of ordinances or regulations screening heavy construction like this from single-family residences. I think that's something that should be considered by future councils. But I think the suggestion that in the future, for community outreach, it would be a very good idea for the SMC to consider neighborhood forums so they understand what the possible plans for expansion are, potential timelines, understanding, of course, these are all in flux.
You know, I think Stillwater Medical Center representative said they didn't really know what they were going to do here, and they're just preparing for the future. And I think, you know, I kind of have to take them at their word. I don't know why they would say something else. So it just seems like it is a natural step. They own the property. They know they need to expand at some point. And like I'm sorry, I forget your name, that lives across the street there, but you could have worse neighbors than the Stillwater Medical Center. So I think, you know, that's a valid point. I think it's an idealistic view for them to be able to say what they're going to do with it. It would be a nice question to have answered, but they really may not know what they're going to do with it. It's just a step in the process is they have to get the zoning correct so they can do anything. I don't see a nefarious motivation from the medical center for this zoning change, personally.
I think that the fact that they don't really know what they're going to do with it could make people in the neighborhood a little bit more concerned. This Charette master plan from 2020 shows that piece of property as belonging to the medical center and no projected use. In fact, in the whole document, there's really no justification for them acquiring that property. It's just, in the future, they may need it. So I guess we have to take their word for it, that in the future there isn't currently any use for it. In the future, there will be a use. I guess because the city grows, the community grows, there's more demand for medical. But someone living nearby has no idea what the consequences of the change will be.
Any other questions or comments or thoughts from commissioners? Vice Chair, you're very quiet. Okay, very good. Okay. Is anyone entertaining a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the findings and recommend that the city council approve the proposed map amendment as presented.
I second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. We shall now vote. Someone didn't. Oh, it's me. Sorry, I'm like, someone didn't do it. All right, motion passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda, preliminary plat, SUB 19-20.
Yes. This last item on the agenda tonight is regarding a part of our code, section 23-63, under the Plat subdivision approval process. Our code our code states that once a preliminary plat is approved by you as the Planning Commission, it then moves on, before it can move on as a final plat, it has a 2-year window it has to be approved. Fry Farms is a good partner of the city. They're putting a development in at 32nd and Western, and they've requested that their preliminary plat have an extension. And their representative, Brad Reed, is here to answer any questions that you have. I'm also available to answer any questions you have as staff.
Yes, I have a question. Please refresh my memory, but what activities are authorized prior to the approval of a preliminary plat?
So once a plat has been approved by you, they can begin to put in the infrastructure, the sewer, the water, the utilities, the streets, do all the final grading.
Right, but prior to the approval of the preliminary plat, what can be done?
Great, correct. So
It's already been.
this is a preliminary plat that was approved on February 18th of 2020.
So they're asking for an extension to the final approval?
Yes, no, extension to, yes, it's more of a clerical thing. They're actually, they've been a great partner, and I don't want to go into all the details, but they've been waiting on an agreement with a neighboring subdivision. And so
Right.
It is the recommendation of city staff that we accommodate this. Otherwise, they would have to go through the full process again. This is more of just a clerical thing. It's just a common extension that needs to be made in order, and you will see the final plat before it goes through the process. So this is not circumventing the system in any way.
Any other questions for staff?
Yeah, if I've got my bearings correct, it's to the west of the new development that's in process right now along Western, correct? Of 500 homes?
Yes, there's two subdivisions there, Fry Farms and Park Valley. Park Valley. And this is Fry Farms, and it's the one that's most further along. Yep. So it's getting close. Without, again, getting into the weeds, they're waiting on an agreement with that neighboring, that helps the city as far as the sanitary sewer pump station. So it's not in, if it was up to them, this would already be done. You'd already be seeing the final plat. So we're just asking tonight from staff, or they are requesting that there be an extension to their preliminary plat. And you can ask their engineer for the amount of days that they would be requesting.
All right, very good. Any other questions?
Well, I know it's probably not part of this discussion necessarily, but it's a curiosity is at what point in the process do And who deals with it? Just the roads that lead in and out of that area, 32nd, is 2-lane and Western's 2-lane, and there's going to be a lot of homes. And if this is adding, obviously we'd be adding to that. How does that get processed?
Worked out? Yeah, that's a great question. So that gets worked out with our engineering staff. And I know that I've heard some of these discussions, so I can give you some information, but we are well aware of the impact that these 500 homes are going to be on the community. We are in conversations with the transportation half-cent being approved. It now can move up some of the plans for Western, what we need to do to Western to accommodate, but also in the details of this final plat process is that we work with turn lanes and things that the developers have to put in, and we have worked out those details with them according to traffic impact analysis studies and traffic counts that city engineering has approved for these developments.
Okay.
So it's a great question. Thank you.
Thanks, Brady.
At this time, if the applicant would like to come forward, please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Brad Reed, 2212 Northwest 50th, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, 73112. As mentioned, this project is moving forward. Water and sewer is both in the ground. We are waiting on the Park Valley addition. There's a common shared lift station. They were a little behind us on our plan approval. We thought they were going to kind of move forward at the same time as us. They've ordered the lift station parts. We're told they're about 3 months out. We are sending the paving crews back in, so the final plat should be as soon as we can get it in. But we are tied to that Park Valley lift station before we can ask for the final plat because we technically don't have sanitary sewer until that's in. So we'd ask for the extension. This isn't something that's just sitting around. We have every intention to move forward. We didn't want to start the loan process for the large sum of money for the paving to start getting interest on that until we knew that we were going to be able to bring a final plat forward. But this project is moving forward. We turned in phase 2, which is the last phase. It's a 2-phase project. We turned in phase 2 last week to the city of Stillwater, so that project is moving forward as well.
And did you have a period of time that you wanted to ask for the extension?
I would ask for a year just to make sure that we don't have, I don't think we're going to take that long. But as I mentioned, we're tied to the addition to the north. They have to have a fully functioning lift station before we're allowed to pull a final plat. And so
Got it. Okay.
we will be done in a few months, but lift stations are a little complicated. They have to have natural gas to them. They have to have electric to them to be fully functioning. So that can take a little bit of time. We're moving as fast as we can on that. We're trying to work with those guys, but I'd ask for a year. As I mentioned, I don't think it'll be that long. I think you'll see a final plat within a few months.
A year sounds like a long time unless you work in construction and design.
Yes.
And those of us who do know that supply chain issues certainly have a lengthy ripple effect right now on construction. So a year sounds like a fairly reasonable ask at this point in time. Any questions for the applicant? Thank you so much. Guess I should ask.
Yeah, just to sum it up, I agree, you hit it on the head. I think this was a supply chain issue with some of these pump station parts. Again, they've been a good partner with the city. They've been working with the city on this project. It is our recommendation as a city to allow this extension.
All right, with that, I'll go ahead and ask. Is there anyone else tonight that would like to speak in favor of this item? Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition of the item? With that, we'll close the public hearing. We've got staff's recommendation and our staff's findings on alternative. Commissioners, any more discussion, or is anyone entertaining a motion?
Seeing no further discussion, I would make motion to move to approve, unless there's a further discussion.
I would second that.
Just to clarify,
So motion is to grant an extension of 1 year from today's date on the item. Okay.
thank you.
We'll now vote. Motion passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda is the meeting summary for review and possible action for the regular meeting of February 1st. Anyone have any corrections? Note any omissions on anything? If none, do I hear a motion to approve?
Without objection, move to approve.
Have a motion, do I have a second to approve?
Second?
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the regular meeting summary of February 1st. We'll now vote. Motion passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda is miscellaneous items from staff, planning commissioners, or the city attorney for discussion and possible action. The only thing we have listed is that the next planning commission meeting is March the 1st. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Without objection, move to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second to adjourn. We shall now vote. Motion passes 5-0. We're now adjourned.